So I'm recording, and we're gonna do the games for PT52, which effectively, when I do these now, I realize that PT52, this is a thoroughly modern exam. It throws at you all the funny little tricks that you might expect on any game section on a modern exam. So, particularly that difficult rule in game 4 that you had to contend with, the one with M, H, and K. That's a pretty common thing that you'll see on a basic ordering game on a modern test. That very complicated OR rule. So we'll take a look at that in stride. The first game, I didn't feel like there was anything noteworthy on that, so we're gonna skip that and go straight on to game 2, which was pretty difficult. There's sort of a pattern to it that I think once you get a hold of, you're going to be doing pretty good. So let's take a look at that. We got our field trip to the Museum of Natural History. Each of 6 children wanna. Oh, let's get a different pen color here. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen yet. Okay, so let me share my screen first, and then we'll start. Can somebody just confirm when they do see the screen?
We can see it.
Okay, great. Make sure I sign out of Hangouts so no lewd messages pop up from idiotic friends. Okay. Okay, so 52, game 2. It's on page 17 of the compilation, if you want to grab that. 10 new actual official LSAT prep tests. So, like I said before, this is a thoroughly modern exam. There's some funny little idiosyncrasies on the game section where you can tell the test makers are essentially trying to throw something that's a slight variation on what you know and what you're used to here. So as you see these little variations going forward, make sure to pay a special attention to them because they really do reuse them on these modern tests a lot. And we'll talk about particularly game 3, which has kind of a funny twist that makes it difficult to diagram. So just really be aware of that when I draw attention to it later on. Okay, so for this one, we're going, game 2 is a pretty simple grouping game. There's just a lot of rules, and you have to keep looking back at the rules. But if you do that, I think you won't have too much trouble if you're good at diagramming quickly and so forth. So we've got 6 kids, J, K, L, S, T, and V, and they're going to be accompanied by one of 3 adults. So we've got basically 3 groups here, MOP. I'm not even going to bother even thinking about their full names, M, O, and P. And moreover, we know that each one accompanies exactly 2 children. So unlike, games where it's ambiguous and there might be 3 with one teacher and 1 with another teacher, here it's no. You're going to have 2 of these people going into each of these spots. So that makes things a little easier. But then they hit us right off with some kind of tricky rules. So if Juana is accompanied by Miss Margolis, then Lucida is accompanied by Podorowski, right? So I like to put the group down here in subscript, but it wouldn't really matter if you did it the other way around, like MJ. But that to me intuitively makes less sense. Make sure on these tricky rules that you do write the contrapositive. If you don't, and you're left trying to think about it in your head, I think it's just causing a lot of extra mental work. So not L with P, not L with P, then J can't be with M. That would be out. J would have to be somewhere else. So make sure you get that contrapositive in there. Okay, if Kyle is not accompanied by Margolis, so Kyle M, oh, sorry, that's bad, M, then we're going to have V with O. Okay, V with O. So say that K is over here, that would force V into this O group. And then the contrapositive, if V is not with O, then K is with M. So just remember now that those two bear some relationship to each other. K and M, K and V, J and L, they have a relationship to each other. Okay, T is with either M or O, so that means no T right here on the end is the best way to diagram that. You could also write T into here or here, that works too, but I like to try and stay consistent, and not T here is the best way to remind yourself of that. And now here's the real meat of this game. We've got these some kids that apparently don't get along, right? So J, K, I like to think of it as not getting along, like things are phobic of each other. J and K can't be together in a group. Order doesn't matter. They just can't be together in a group. L and S can't be together. And then lastly, T and V can't be together. And this turns out to be enormously important because say you know a full group, like say I have L and T in here, well, now J and K have to be split up among the remaining two groups, right? So that allows me to make a very strong inference. And now I'm just worried about where S and V can go, for the rest of the game. So I can figure out a lot from these rules here. And we'll see that pattern over and over again. So let me work with a little mini diagram here so that we can do any work as needed for the actual questions. And I want to just do a couple to show you the game in action. And then we'll take requests if there's any of the remaining questions that people want to see. Okay, so if M accompanies, we've got MOP down here. If M accompanies L and T, which of the following must be true? So let's look for that pattern here. L and T are in these two blocks. And now we're not worried at all about splitting up L and S and T and V. We've taken care of that, but J and K need to get split up. So I'm just putting them arbitrarily like this. It's a split option, right? You could just as easily draw that down here. Position within the groups does not matter in this game. So JK, JK. And then you want to keep track of what's left, right? S and V. Is there any rules about that? Well, if not VO, then K would be forced into M. So if V was here, it would force M into this group, which clearly doesn't work. So now V has to be with O, and then S has to be here because it's the only spot with S. So what must be true based on that? Just look for something related to V and S since they're fixed. The easiest thing here is just to scan down until you see S must be with P, and that's answer choice E. Okay, so pretty easy there. Nothing too hard. Let's clear up our mini diagram here, and we'll get another one going. Okay, so for 10, we've got J and V with Podorowski. And again, I want you to see this same pattern. This is not going to be an issue. This is not going to be an issue. But we have to split up L and S. LS, LS, right? So we've got this thing now, and we're just trying to figure out which group Margolis could accompany. So let's look at K and S first. K and S, so we'll make this K, this S. This can be L. And we've handled the LS split, so the only thing left here is T, and this breaks no rules. T is where it needs to be, right? Sorry, I didn't want to be misleading by having whatever this is in here, because that's not like a rule that we can know. Yeah, and basically you can just see that it works, right? So A works as an option. So again, we just worked with that same theme of dealing with these rules here. Pretty easy stuff. Okay, let me clear up my board. While I'm doing this, does anyone have any further requests for this game for a question that they had trouble with or anything? Lindsay, I'm seeing that you're having issues. It looks to me like you're already in. So I'm not sure what more to do. You might be having some sort of problem on your end. As far as the access code, Steph, do you know what that is off the top of your head?
Yep, I already sent everything to her. She's having thunderstorms in her area, so it's on her end.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Sorry I didn't see that till now.
You're welcome.
Um, okay, so it looks like we have no further questions on game 2. So going once, going twice, let's move on to game 3. Basically, I think the most important thing is that you guys always see how to diagram it, and then, you should be able to do a good job working through it on your own from there. So, but of course, if there's any question that you simply could not see the inferences, I do always want to go over that. Okay, now this next game is a lot more complicated, and we kind of deal with a sort of a diagramming problem. And I really think this game is a good lesson in how not to freak out just because something's a little different than what you're used to, right? So in this game, we've got 3 short seminars, G, O, P, goals, objection, and persuasion, and 3 long, H, N, and T. So long, short. And you find out that they're going to be scheduled for a 3-day sales training conference. Each day, 2 of the seminars will be given consecutively. So that means they're not stacked on top of each other. So essentially what's going on here is we're ordering 6 things, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And you could do the game like this is day 1, this is day 2. So day 1, day 2, day 3. And this is the earlier seminar right here, and this is the later one in the day right here. And we'll hold that off to the side because it's really not a bad way to do the game. You totally could. Each day there would be, the best way to do it probably would be then to do it like an advanced ordering game here. And then you can mark whether it's the short seminar or the long one on this top row. So some days it might be SL, other days it might be, LS, right? You're not sure yet. Now, that way is a perfectly valid way of doing this game. I do think it has some drawbacks because it's harder to remind yourself that, like, for one of these, you're going to be drawing from GOP, and for another one, H and T, right? You can only have like one from this group and one from this group in each day. So how I chose to do the game, which I think works, certainly just as well, was I set it up like this: day 1, day 2, day 3. I'm going to then set it up like a typical advanced ordering game where I've got different levels. And on this level, I'm going to keep track of which one of G, O, and P is on that day. And then on this level, I'm going to keep track of which of the long seminars is on that day. Sorry, the long seminars. And the only tricky thing is now you have to remember that you don't know the order in this diagram. Say I put P here and N here, and that's my first day. Well, from my diagram, I have to just remember that, within that day, it might be like PN or it might be NP. So you'll see how I work with it, but this does have drawbacks. Well, it simplifies the matter of you, like it makes it very clear that on each day you can have only one of these and one of these. It has drawbacks because then within that day, you don't really have a sense as much as with this diagram of the sequential order, right? But it's still what we're going to use for now. Okay, so the rules here are actually not that hard. So really all the difficulty in this game is just coming from this one thing. We got the first rule I already talked about, exactly one short seminar, one long seminar. Telemarketing will not be given until both G and O have been given. So we're going to see a G, O, T order. And then the last rule, negotiating will not be given until persuasion has been given. So persuasion, negotiation. Simple. Really, there's like no rules. So, I mean, what can you do here as far as inferences? I tend to say you don't want to take too much time just looking for inferences. The one thing that jumped out to me is G and O both have to go before T. There's no way T could be on this first day, right? You could conceivably have T on this second day. It might be a little tricky. You'd have to have goals, objections, then T, right? But it is legit that it could be on that last day. On the other hand, G, O, they could go on the third day, right? You could have G and then T. So stuff to be aware of. You can't really make any further inferences. You could have P and N on the third day, for example. Okay, so let's look at the actual questions here. We'll skip the acceptability. The acceptability question, you're just going to do the same way you do any one. Take your rules one at a time, see where they're violated. Let's do 14. Okay, and I'll actually solve it both ways, like with both diagrams here, just in case you did it one way and not the other, because they're both totally valid. Okay, if goals is on the first day of the sales training, so we know it's right here, goals. And here's the problem with this diagram. Now you just know G is here, but you don't know, same as here, you don't know which one it is. But is on the first day, then which of the following could be true? So N in 1 negotiating on the first day? No, because P always has to be before it. So we cross that off. Objections on the first days? No, because that's our own, G is already our only short seminar on that day. And I think that's where this style of diagram right here becomes better, because it shows us already we use the GOP spot really clearly. How about persuasion on the first day? Nope, same reason. P1 is gone. For the same reason B was gone. Humor on the second day, so let's mark it here. Humor on the second day. What's the issue with that? Well, oh, we got somebody had some interference in the background. So what's the issue with H on the second day? Is there one? Well, it's going to force, we have to have G and O before T. So you're going to have this order, G-O, and then T. And then that's going to force N to the first spot. And that's no good because now you're breaking this rule down here and you're not happy. So a little harder to see how that one was not going to work, but you end up eliminating it, and E is the answer by elimination there. Okay, let's take a look at 15. I think this game is hard enough that we probably just want to work straight through some of these. Okay, if negotiation is given at some time before objection, so we now have like a new rule just for this question, P, N, O, right? Sorry, I did that really ugly. Whenever I sort of make a new rule that just applies to one question, I circle it so I make sure I understand that it's a local rule, only applies to this question, and I'm going to erase it after I'm done. if negotiation is given sometime before objection, which of the following must be true? And I just wanted to look for something that just has to be true based on this diagramming. So like negotiation before goals, I can't see whether that would be true or not. So I'm not really giving a full look at it. I want to scan through these. Persuasion before goals? No, again, those two don't have any relationship to each other. So I'm not taking a hard look at this yet. Persuasion sometime before objections? Yeah, it's perfectly clear from that diagram that that has to be true. So there's a faster way to solve it. Rather than trying A and B out, make sure you give a quick scan through, seeing if anything straight up violates this new local rule. Okay, 15. Okay, let's take a look at 16. Which of the following cannot be the second seminar given on the second day of the sales training conference? So how about humor? Well, we could have humor. We could have G-O, let's see, G-O-T, and then that forces N to the first day. So that's a really big problem. And I think A cannot be the second seminar given on the second day of the sales training conference. Let me just make sure that I'm not missing something here. 16, section 2. I'm apparently missing something here. So let's redo that. Humor the second on the second day. Oh, humor could be the second on the second day because you could have this arrangement. G-O and then T and then P-N. Right. So I knew I was screwing that up somehow because I got a different answer than when I did it right before right before I came here tonight. So that doesn't work because of that. Let's try this one here, persuasion. What about persuasion on the second day? Well, the only way to do that is we're going to have N after. That forces T to the front, right? And this is, again, the advantage of this diagram. We can quickly see what we need to do with our long seminars. P is going to have to be after N per this rule, so it goes in day 3. That forces T to day 1. And now we've got a problem because G and O both have to be before T. It doesn't work. There's only space for one short seminar. So B cannot be true, and it's the right answer. Okay, anybody to C17, or are we good with this game? Okay, looks like we're good on this game. Let's go to game 4. Sorry I didn't label this game correctly. This was game 3 that we were just doing. Okay, this last game, we've got kind of a tricky little setup here. We got everything's totally normal until basically you get to the last rule. And just as in the last game, that was something that's kind of new and different that you might not be used to. This here is something that is a pretty rare type of rule until the modern exams, and now it's much more common. So definitely pay attention to the last rule in this game. Okay, let me make sure I get my blank pen. Okay, so we're delivering bread to each of 6 restaurants in succession: F, G, H, K, L, and M. Not necessarily in that order, so we know it's just a simple basic ordering game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. and the following conditions apply. So far, really easy, right? G is earlier than Kanzaki. Let's make sure we've got room to put all our rules here. G is earlier than Kanzaki, but later than Figueroa. So G is later than K, or sorry, earlier than K, but later than F. H's delivery is earlier than Ginsburg, so HG, like that. Next, we get kind of a tricky, conditional mixed sequencing rule. It's conditional and it's sequencing. This type of rule also is more common on modern exams, so you want to get used to working with it. If F is earlier than M, then, so there's our conditional error, then L is earlier than H. Now, when you're doing the contrapositive of this, don't just do not H. That's not very visually useful. Not LH is HL, right? So I'm writing the contrapositive here. I'm reversing this side, and then, it becomes the it becomes the sufficient condition. And now I'm taking the sufficient condition and negating it and making the necessary condition. And that's how I make the contrapositive. And here, that's going to be MF, right? Not FM is MF. So that's the best way to write that rule. Okay, and this last rule is really tricky. Either Malpighi's delivery is earlier than Harris, so MH, or MK, but not both, right? So when MH is the case, this has to be false, right? Which means that K is then here, right? So I think this is the best way to go about thinking about this. When it's MH, then MK has to be false, because not both, right? Now, on the other hand, when it's MK like this has to be false. MH has to be false, which means H has to be before M. So just make sure you practice diagramming this rule over and over again. It's kind of a brain twister just to do it like I did, but you'll see this rule again possibly. Yeah. So make sure you get your head all the way around it. So we're going to see either this order or this order. And then it's worth kind of noting how that would play out in the game, because we see K here and we see H here. This means basically M is going to swing to either down here, so it'll have both H and K in front of it, or it'll swing all the way over to here in front of K. So I think it's worth kind of seeing how that's going to play out. Okay, we'll skip the acceptability question, and we'll just do one of these here. If F is fourth, then which of the following must be true? So F fourth, you know that G and K are then right in front of it. F, G, K, per this diagram. These two both have to be in front of that. And then we now know that we're seeing this order, M, H, K, right? So M could not be third, otherwise it would mess up that order that we have to see here. So you could do M not third, and you're going to have an order of M, H somewhere back in here. The last variable, L, what do we do with that L? If we see HL, then we'll see this order, but we're already going to see that anyway. So I'm just seeing if I can solve the problem with this work right here, not doing anything further. What must be true? Ginsburg delivery is fifth. Yeah, I didn't even have to do this thinking. So you just saw me violate my own rule, which is anytime you make an inference, check if you've answered the question, right? G must be fifth. It was super easy, right? I just had a question. Hold on. Why not negate the contrapositive, Brittany? This is the negation of the this is the negation right here, right? another way to make this contrapositive is not LH negated, right? Then not FM, right? But that's exactly the same as this, right? Not LH is HL, not FM is MF. So I think it's mentally much easier rather than writing this to do this instead when making the contrapositive. So let's get rid of that. Okay, so 20. Okay, if M is first, so we now know we're in this order right here. And Leacock's delivery is third, then which of the following must be true? So what we see here is we cannot have this order. This isn't possible, right? But say we try HL, then we need to have this order, right? MF, and that's fine. So this rule really just isn't coming into play here. So the first place I would be looking here is at this diagram. We've taken out everything except these guys. We just have to see how this little part of our rules fits in here. What you're basically going to have is H or F, then G, K, right? These two both need to be before G, so you just need to get them in before G, and then K and G fill up those two back spots. So what must be true in that situation? F is second. Nope, that's ambiguous. We're not sure. H is second. Same thing. H fourth. No question about H or F is going to be the right answer here. Kanzaki fifth is not right, right? That just is wrong. But then we finally get to Kanzaki is last, K is last. Yeah, that has to be true based on our diagram. Get very used to this inference that I made with just plugging this whole thing into here. There was only one way that could play out. And I used the split option to cover this ambiguity that I don't know. And if you have trouble with it, just make sure you rewatch this video when I post it later and jump to this part until you can see how that happened. Okay, what must be true? Which of the following must be true? Figueroa's delivery is earlier than Leacock's. So now they're asking us for something that has to be true in all of these. And this is obviously just a really tricky question. I think I ended up just trying them all out until I got to the right answer. It turns out that the right answer here is, let's just work backwards from the right answer here. I forgot to mark it. 21, which of the following must be true? C. So it turns out it's C. Harris's delivery is earlier than Kanzaki's. Feeling a little stage pressure here. Hold on. So let's try to make that not true. Let's try to make it KH and see what happens. We'll do M KH MF G KHL, for example. And now we've got HL and then we've got MF. What's the problem with this order? We've got MKH, FGKH. Why am I not seeing a problem with this? Oh, yeah, I screwed up the order of G. Yeah, it's a simple fact of this diagram right here. It's like, I don't know why I made this much more complicated than it has to be. You can't, it's just clear from this diagram that H has to be before K. So 20 was actually just a gimme if you scanned through the answer choices correctly, like I should have done, and just make sure nothing violates this order right here. Sorry, guys, this is the kind of thing that sometimes happens to me when I'm solving in front of 12 people rather than doing it on my own. So I get nervous sometimes. But it should have been clear from this diagram that this could never be true. Okay, so I don't think there's anything too much more complicated in there. Once you have this diagram correctly, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So let's go on to LR. I figure I'll do some LR with you guys tonight. Matthew, I post them right on the LSAT forum. I'm going to find a more permanent home for them, like somewhere that's easier to find, like way down the road, you know, but I just haven't made it yet. So for now, they're just getting posted right in the LSAT forum. Okay, so let's see what questions got asked here. LR section 1, number 17.